So Rick, just the first kind of your reaction that to me, I think it kind of underscores what you've been telling everybody about TikTok, which is to get it off your phone. The fact that the Biden administration has instructed all federal employees to do that.
Yeah, look, it is a spyware that is on our phones. I'll just be honest with you. I don't allow it in my house. I don't have. If you have it on your phone, I ask you to leave your phone in the car. I just don't allow anyone into my home that has TikTok. It's a real problem, and I don't want to be vulnerable. Look, other people can make a decision that they like TikTok more than they like, being not spied on. But I just don't want to make that decision. I don't think anyone should. But I do come down on the side of you get to choose your risk. I'm not sure that I support completely banning it in the United States. I think that's pretty drastic. I do think that it's important for intelligence officials or agencies to absolutely ban it. But individuals, are addicted to it. They love it and they know the risks and are still doing it. So I fall within the camp of, if you know the risks, then more power to you. I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that, Rick, this from governments. Governments are saying, we know the risk. On our devices, this is too risky. On our state Wi-Fi, we're not going to let you operate on it. If you want to go home and operate it, you can't. Because I agree with you. I don't like banning things. That's my first stop. When I ever hear ban, I always think that's not great. Why are we starting with a ban? But I think what's been different is because of folks like you who are come from the Intel world, and I think there is some bipartisan agreement here about how dangerous it is. I mean, you said people have described it as, and the danger it poses to our country is that all of these devices, it's like, who needs spies when you've got spies in everybody's pocket?
Yeah, and I as someone who was acting director of national intelligence, I can tell you that we've had to give defensive briefings to individuals who got wrapped up with the communist Chinese strategies unknowingly, and that's a problem. I mean, I've seen it too many times. I've seen local politicians, city councilmen, mayors, governors. So it's like local and state officials as well as federal officials. I mean, we all know Eric Swalwell and that case. So individuals are getting wrapped up into this, and now the intel community is doing defensive briefings. I've seen it too much. I think it's a real danger.
Yeah, the broader issue, we've got a new statement from the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Rick, and the statement is basically the U.S. has to change their attitude or they are risking a conflict with China. I think what people always want to know is how much of this is just kind of propaganda and rhetoric, and how much of this is the risk that we actually would be in an actual conflict with China.
Look, when I was ambassador to Germany, I was very aggressive about Huawei. And what I heard constantly in Europe when we would share as much intelligence as we could to say, you can't be buying Huawei. We know they're the cheapest. We know they're coming in with hardware, but it's very unsafe for your governments to do it. I think there was a sense that people believed us, but there wasn't an alternative. And so they were calculating that they needed it, it was cheaper, and they were going to try to work to mitigate the problems. I don't believe you can mitigate the problems. I think it's a real serious problem. I think the Chinese have rhetoric that threatens us constantly. But let me be really clear. When the Chinese came to Alaska and sat with Anthony Blinken, they were repeating the Democratic Party's Black Lives Matter messaging. They were calling us a racist country that were pushing slavery. It was exactly the Black Lives Matter talking points that the Democrats keep pushing. We are in danger when the left critiques and criticizes America in that way, because now our political enemies and others repeating those claims, and they're false claims.
I mean, even Ricky, this latest statement, which was in English, given it about our country. So it's Wang Yi, their most senior diplomat, said, I think this was also a shot at the U.S. This is on our infrastructure. He said, if the United States does not hit the brakes and continues to speed down the wrong path, no amount of guardrails can prevent derailment, which will become conflict and confrontation. And so it's like they are watching everything happening in our country. So they know that the talk on the trade derailment is a topic. So they use all that rhetoric, Rick, in the statement that's threatening us about action, but it's also, I think it's a nod to say, like you were talking about Black Lives Matter, we're watching your country, and if you are having these infrastructure problems, we've got better infrastructure, we're better at this, and we're going to mock you at the world stage about it.
Look, you can't blame the Chinese for being aggressive in the face of a weak president. What I would say is that the Democrats need to stop with this crazy radical Black Lives Matter talk, because it's damaging us on the world stage. People are beginning to believe that we're a racist, systematically racist country, and we're not. We have problems. We have to confront those problems. But to suggest that somehow the system supports it and wants it to happen is wrong and ridiculous and un-American. So I would say we've got to push back hard. The Democrats have created this problem, much like, I say this is a little bit of a spin, but when the Senate Democrats dropped the Trump sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, Putin's pipeline, they helped create a war in Ukraine. There are consequences for weak policies and weak statements.
And I think what we're having to do is we're kind of like Americans in general are having to kind of figure this out on their own. They're listening to shows like this. And then I think a lot of people, once they heard that from you, Rick, got deleted TikTok.
Yeah, I was one of them. I'm the first person to say this. Pretty much Rick's reason of why you should not have this on your phone was enough for me to go, yeah, I probably shouldn't have it on my phone. Because as someone who works in this industry, I obviously always want to be in touch with what's going on. I actually have a problem when people work in social media and they're like, I don't have Instagram. It's like, well, you should, because how are you going to function?
Right.
But I had spent my time on TikTok. I developed at least 100 followers, and I decided it was time to just deactivate and leave. Now, that can't be said for a lot of conservative entities. It can't be said for a lot of media companies.
I'd say most people are still using it.
Absolutely, and maybe utilizing it to the point, like I said, where I think it may swayed an election. So you got to be careful. Again, even when you're deciding to pull off of these things, not because of the security person, because of your influence.
Yeah, Rick, as always, we appreciate your commentary, insight into this. I think a lot of this started with Rick that day, where he said on our broadcast, delete it from your phones. And like he said today, don't even allow it at your house.